This is James Taylor, and you're listening to The Creative Life. The Creative Life podcast is a show created for you, the creative. If you're looking for inspiration, motivation, and advice while at home, at work, or on your daily commute, then this show is for you. Each episode brings you a successful creative, whether that's a musician, writer, artist, designer, performer, educator, or creative entrepreneur. They share their journey, their successes, their failures, their creative process, their insights, and much, much more. In this episode, I talk with Pia Silva about branding for creatives, freedom as a goal, and the Brandup Process. Enjoy this episode. Hey, it's James Taylor. I'm delighted today to be joined by Pia Silva. Entrepreneur, speaker, and author Pia Silva is a partner and brand strategist at Worstofall Design, where they build badass brands without the BS for 1 to 3 person service businesses in 1 to 3 day intensives. She is a Forbes contributor and has spoken at a host of entrepreneurial organizations, including the $1 Million Women's Summit, Goldman Sach's 10,000 Small Businesses, and the Chamber of Commerce. Her company was named in the top 10 design firms led by young people that are changing the way we look at the world. And her new book is called Badass Your Brand, Impatient Entrepreneur's Guide to Turning Expertise into Profit. And it's my great pleasure to have Pia with us today. So welcome, Pia.
Thank you so much, James. Great to be here.
So share with the listeners what's going on in your world just now.
Well, I launched my book a couple of months ago, and I am overwhelmed and humbled by the kinds of responses I've gotten. I am still working with clients. We had a very busy past month. Actually, we booked ourselves solid because then we're going to go away for 2 months. And that's the freedom lifestyle that I live, and I try to help other entrepreneurs live as well.
I saw that reading in your site and your blog. You when you first kind of got together and kind of started building a business, you built the business with your other half, your spouse, and you set out some ground rules at the start. And I know that freedom was one of the key kind of ground rules that you had, that you said, okay, this is what we want to build this business about. So can you talk about that, just that process of when you first started the business together, what those kind of conversations were?
Absolutely. Well, when we first started, we started with nothing and we had never built a business before. So our goal was really just to be our own bosses. And that was enough. And that was not really reaching far enough. I learned later on that just getting by, but being happy being our own bosses was quite limiting. Over the years, we set different goals. And I would say about a couple of years ago, we got really clear on the freedom. Freedom was always a goal of ours, but when we set it in the forefront, that allowed us to set other goals in our business that we got too much faster. So for example, it's not just, we want freedom. It's, what does freedom look like? It means making this, at least this amount of money per month. It means working a maximum of this many hours per month. It means about having, a certain amount of time for other projects, a certain amount of time for leisure and travel. So getting really granular on those numbers is what actually helped us achieve it.
So in those early days, I imagine when you kind of first start your business and you're kind of going out there looking for business, that must have been difficult to do that, because I know a lot of entrepreneurs, when they first start, they're just having to work all hours just to kind of get in those initial clients. Was it different for you? Had you come from a previous job where you were able to kind of maybe bring some new clients across from that, or was it very much start from scratch?
Oh no, we started from scratch. I've actually never worked in a proper job before. I've always been kind of entrepreneurial freelancer. So when we started our business, we were working out of our apartment in Brooklyn, and we started on Craigslist, just looking for gigs. Anyone who's used Craigslist knows that they do not pay very well, but that was the only place I knew at first to look. So we did a little bit there. And then I actually got a client off of Craigslist who introduced me to networking. Specifically, she invited me to BNI. If you might know, it's an international company, a networking group where you meet every week, you get to know your group, and everyone passes referrals. And I did that really intensely for about 1.5 years. And then I grew out of it. Now I'm pretty anti-networking group, but it was a good experience, and I met a lot of people, and I really learned how to present myself over and over again, have an elevator pitch, the importance of being prepared, the importance of knowing what you're going to say and who you're for and all of that. But it was definitely a hustle for years. And actually, I was working 7 days a week for 3 years. I mean, we started to build an agency, and I ended up in debt because of it. So even though I was working really hard, I was in debt, and it's a common problem I see a lot of entrepreneurs in. You seem to be working all the time, but you can't quite find the profit or get the steady income or the steady clients. And most people I work with are in that position. So definitely was a struggle.
So how did you make that transition then from you're working all the hours, your husband, you're just kind of giving it your best, but you're not really kind of hitting some of the financial goals, which in turn meant you weren't hitting some of the freedom goals that you wanted for yourself. What did you have to do to make that transition? So the business you were working on the business, not in the business.
Yes, no, we were definitely had no freedom when we were working 7 days a week. Well, what happened was the first 3 years of our business, we kind of built into a small agency. So we had hired a couple of employees. We were going for bigger and bigger contracts. That seemed to be the goal of most of the people I came in contact with. So while I was networking, I met a lot of our competition, and I kind of copied what they were doing. I didn't really know any better. And that, in retrospect, is what got us into so much trouble, because we were increasing our prices to $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. We needed those projects because our overhead was much higher with 2 employees. But it seemed to be that was the model, and everybody wants higher priced clients, right? That just seems like a no-brainer. Well, I've completely turned a corner on that. Basically, we ended up in debt 3 years into our business, and we realized, first of all, we had to let our employees go. The overhead was killing us, and we weren't closing the projects. We were getting really close. We were pitching for lots of projects, but we were coming in second on most of them. And that's just because at $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, there is a lot of competition, a lot of really good competition. And again, these are things that I didn't know at the time. And the sales cycle is longer. We were having a hard time. So we turned a corner when we realized that we could let our employees go and still not feel like we were closing up shop, like we were failing. I mean, that's kind of what I had pictured, but my husband really pointed out, my partner, he said, look, this business can look a lot of different ways. Why don't we try it in a different way? And so we really had to look inside ourselves and reevaluate our business model and what we truly loved about what we did and what we didn't love. And it turned out when we put the light on ourselves, we realized that we didn't like the agency model. We didn't like the $50,000 clients. We didn't like the long drawn out projects, the ongoing work. And what we really did like was actually working with small business owners like ourselves and building entire brands in very short amount of time. So the pivot came when we realized we should actually just focus on that. And focus is the key word here. So over the next couple months, we completely pivoted our business. We started working with only 1 to 3 person service businesses, and we started building brands in these 1 to 3 day intensives. So we started with a 1 day at $3,000 instead of what we had been charging was $30,000. And while that seems like a steep drop off, the $3,000 projects were much more profitable than the $30,000 projects. And once we realized that, we said, this business can look completely different. And over the next 12 months, we did $500,000 in sales without networking, without advertising, without social media. The clients just started coming to us once I educated my network on our very focused offering. And it was, nothing short of a miracle that I have now repeated with lots of clients.
So as you say that, one of the things that I love about your intro, you talk about who your business is for and how you help them. So you say for 1 to 3 person service businesses in 1 to 3 day intensives. So that kind of pulls out, first of all, who your ideal clients are, and also it probably gives us some sense of the pricing of your offering as well. So can you talk about that process of just kind of coming to a sense of who your ideal client was? Because I'm guessing that was not an overnight decision. That's quite a big decision to, as you said, use that word focus other person people might say, well, that's limiting your potential
Right.
reach as well. So how did you come to that? And did that, was there maybe some fear around that? You're going to have to turn away businesses if they weren't in that 1 to 3 person service business type?
Well, let me backtrack. Getting very clear on the 1 to 3 person service business, I think came a little bit over time. What was very clear is that our process, so we work in this process called a Brandup. It's this intensive with the client where it ends at the end of the day and they leave with whatever the deliverables are that we agreed on. And this was something that we had actually started years before, but we had just kind of built it as a kind of an aside. It was something that we could offer smaller companies that would come to us that couldn't afford our main offering. We didn't advertise it, we didn't talk about it, but it was this little thing I had in my back pocket if an entrepreneur came to me and they were not really a fit for the $30,000 projects. So this was something we had done a few times, and we knew it only worked with very small businesses because, of course, if you need to make decisions in one day, then you can't have a committee of people who need to think about it and talk it out. You need to have only a couple of opinions in the room who are ready to make those decisions. So so partially the process determined that. And then I would say a lot of people in my network were already these kinds of people. So that was part of how it kind of snowballed so quickly. I knew all these people from networking previously that were these small service businesses. And as we did more and more of those projects, we realized how much we loved working with them, and we got better and better at it. So where we started charging $3,000 for a day, now we charge $15,000 for a day because we did that process over and over again. We got better and better at it. We added more and more value. So of course, the deliverables that a client got 3 years ago are completely different than they do now. I mean, we've really honed the process and what they get. But we realized as we did that process that it was best, and we gave our highest value to small service businesses. So it's definitely a process. What I have found, though, is that the more focused you are, laser focused, quite the opposite. This is not limiting. This is actually expansive because people know exactly who to send to me. They know exactly the kind of person and company that we like to work with, and that's going to work well with us. And so the referrals that I get are so strong. I would say I close 100% of the referrals that I get that are a good fit. Because if you don't close with us, you aren't a good fit.
Yeah. So you work with these clients obviously on their branding, ensuring that they kind of stand out from the crowd. What are some of the things that you help them to ensure that rather than especially those 1 to 3 person services business, there's a huge danger of them just kind of being plain vanilla businesses. Lots of other businesses kind of very similar to. How do you ensure that you add some create some mint-choc chip versions in there, so you either love them or you hate them, but they definitely stand out?
Well, so our process is 2 steps. And the first step is something called a brand shrink. It's an 1.5-hour interview with me and my partner where we deep dive into the business, the person, and everything about them, where they've been, where they are, and where they're trying to go. And I look at things like how they define success. I ask them about their previous clients, their favorite clients, what they loved about them, who their most profitable clients were. And through that process, that discovering process, this interview, it usually becomes pretty clear where their best opportunity lies. So sometimes it has to do with some sort of contrarian voice, what the personality of their brand is. Sometimes it has to do with their target market, being laser focused. Not always, sometimes that's not the biggest piece of it. And it might be by industry, it might be by size, but none of these are set in stone. Sometimes it has to do with the process itself. Can we brand a process for them that they can replicate over and over again? And sometimes it's all of these things. But the point is I've kind of developed my own formula for badassery by seeing that if you have a couple of these things, the intersection is what's going to help you stand apart from the competition.
So once you've kind of gone through that initial, that brand shrink process, kind of that discovery process with them, and just check, are these intensives and these discovery processes one-on-one in person, or are they, on the phone? How do those start? And then after that next step, and you mentioned deliverables. What are some of the deliverables that you offer there?
Sure. So the brand shrink interview is usually on the phone. Some local people prefer to come in, but we work with people all over the world. So usually it's on the phone. And then the Brandup itself, similarly, is either via Zoom and Skype or in person. Some people just want to fly in to do it with us and to spend the day with us. But more often than not, it's remote. And the deliverables are usually the design of your logo, the design and build of your website, all of your strategy implemented into your messaging and copy, your identity materials, business cards, stationery, your social media design. Often I'm doing marketing strategy for them. I'm helping them strategize what their blog might be. I mean, it really depends on what the client needs, but it's usually most of those foundational elements.
And this is something you do with clients, and it's, the key part there, you said 1 to 3 day intensive. So are all these deliverables delivered in those 1 to 3 days?
Yep. 6 p.m. at the end of the day, the website is launched and all the files are handed over. And to be honest, it's usually a 1 or 2 day. The 3 day is actually a much bigger project that is only for thought leaders who also want a photo shoot, and get into that later.
Absolutely. So as you've been going on this process and building this great business, can you talk to us about a time where you gave your heart and your soul to a particular project or a particular client, and for whatever reason it just didn't work out? And more importantly, what were the lessons that you took from that experience?
Well, that's a good question. In this particular process, are you speaking about this particular process? I have lots of stories like that. I don't have a lot of stories in this process, and I'll tell you why. Our voice and our messaging and our process of bringing clients in is very, we're very careful about who hires us. And there's kind of a lot of barriers to entry. And the reason is we need a certain kind of person with a certain kind of mentality to do this process, because it requires somebody who is very decisive, somebody who is very trusting of us. They're really hiring us to do what we do best. They're not hiring us to show them work and then have them, tinker with the color blue for 5 hours. Like, they are coming to us because they trust that we know what we're doing. So because of that, by the time somebody shows up for the Brandup, they're ready to go. They're like, give it to me. I want what you have. So I haven't had really any problems with clients in this setting.
But it sounds like you have been in those meetings where it's taken 5 hours for someone to choose the color blue.
Oh my gosh. Yes. So that's what I was going to say. Actually, my entire experience before that had hiccups like that along the way. And actually, this whole process and my whole process of creating these barriers and being very, extreme in owning our voice so that we only attract certain kinds of people, all of that was put in place to avoid those pitfalls. So what I have found, and by far the biggest lesson, and it's a long lesson, but the biggest lesson is client management of expectations. And at every step of the process is critical to the success. So forget the work. The work has always been good. The work was amazing when the clients were, energy drain. The work was amazing when they're not. It's the management of the process that decides whether a client is going to have a successful experience or not.
So you're now at the point where you have those businesses, they're coming to you, you're booked solid as well. I'm guessing that may almost kind of create a tension as well, because you've built a process, and perhaps that process is something that you could build an additional team around now, and have them kind of work with clients on that process. But kind of going back to your core values, you mentioned about freedom. Where do you see the growth for a business like yours?
Yeah, that's a great question. most people go there, and I've had a lot of mentors try to convince me to hire teams and train them on our process. And they say, look, you got something special here, and you guys could have lots of teams working on lots of projects. But you're right. That's not in line with our success goals and freedom. I've had employees. I'm not interested in having employees again. Could you make a lot of money doing that? Maybe. But it's not all about money. It's about what you want to do with your life and how you want to spend your time. So my growth plan is really been, we continue to work with clients. We love doing these intensives, but we do fewer of them as time goes on, because as the price has increased, we need to do fewer to get the same amount of money. So I've actually pivoted in the last 6 months and put a lot of energy into my personal brand. So I released this book. I do a lot of speaking. I'm going to be launching a coaching program in the next couple of months. I have a DIY course already that people take. People who can't afford our services, they can go through our process themselves. But I'm really going to take that and shift it into something where they do the course, but they have my personal support. And that is a way that I can scale without sacrificing the freedom that I have and love and will always covet.
It's funny because that freedom, and I'm reminded of an interview I did a while back with Paul Jarvis, the designer who works with Marie Forleo and Chris Carr, and great designer. And he's probably got like a 6-month waiting list, and he's very, very selective in terms of the clients he works with. And it's very difficult to get to work with him because he's definitely, like you, not a believer in bigger is always better. He just wants to be doing, a quality of great work. And I remember in our businesses where we do a lot of retreats, like creativity retreats. And there was a point, I think we ran, our 4th retreat or something, and we always make them in beautiful places like Amalfi Coast or the south of France or Napa Valley. And I remember someone saying to me, oh, what you should do is, instead of it just being for like 30 people at $2,000 a head, you should make it, you should have it 100 people at, $3,000 a head, or whatever the thing was.
Right.
And for me personally, it just kind of got away from the, they were called retreats for a reason. It felt better with like a smaller group of people. So we decided just to do more of them, but more smaller ones in really beautiful locations rather than do these big ones, big venues and things. But it's very much a personal decision, and that's not the decision that everyone would make. I can imagine someone else making a decision which would be right for them, which is, I want to be doing these these events for 1,000 people, 5,000 people as well. So you just kind of going to that core of what your values are, and then building your business around it is so important.
I love that story. Yeah, absolutely. It's a completely different experience if you have 100 people on a retreat, and maybe that's not fun.
Yeah.
I love that.
I spoke to someone who went and did a 100 person one, and he called me up afterwards and he said, never again. Never again. He said he lost the fun in it. And actually, because you have to bring in a lot more team, as your infrastructure's more, and he said you make obviously more money. He said, but there's a different level of stress. Then he said just wasn't the process
more headache.
enjoyable. Exactly. So let's talk about we were talking about some resources and different things as well. Do you have an online resource or tools or apps that you really love and you find valuable to the work that you do?
Sure. Oh my gosh, I use all kinds of apps and to support me, especially because I don't have an in-house team. One thing that really changed a piece of my process is EchoSign. EchoSign? Yeah, Adobe EchoSign. So it's this automated document signing. DocuSign is another one. Having my contracts standardized and templated and being able to just email them to people and have them filed was huge, because for a while there, I would spend a good hour or two, writing a contract. Editing a contract specifically for a client. And that was just a couple of hours I never got back. So anything that saves me time, I'm obviously highly coveting. I also use Boomerang for my email, Boomerang for Gmail, which is a great resource. It allows me to track who opens things. And I just find that to be very useful, because you never know in this day and age, lose emails. So it's nice to know, oh, somebody didn't open that email. They missed it. Okay, I can send it again. So those are two big ones for me.
And I love it. I'm guessing as well, your move from that kind of agency model to a much more kind of boutique kind of business as well, and working with a very tightly knit kind of group of types of clients. You probably saved a lot of time, because maybe in those agencies you had to put together larger proposal documents, where I'm guessing now you can really do it. You've got a great site and it lays out everything, that's involved in the intensives and those two different processes, and then it's just really it's an agreement that's there. Oh
yeah, absolutely. I used to spend hours designing these beautiful proposals, and now we don't do proposals at all. It's a 10-minute conversation to figure out if a brand shrink is right for them. And as of now, we charge $1,500 for a brand shrink. So it's really just, hey, if this is something you're interested in and we think it's a good fit, that's the first step. And then the brand shrink is an extended version of a proposal, because it's a valuable strategy. I mean, people buy the brand shrink for the strategy alone, without an intention of, hiring us for the brand. But it also allows us to give a very clear and intelligent proposal to them, because now that we've spent an hour and a half, deep diving into your interview, the proposal at the end of it is very thoughtful. And I think thoughtful on a different level than any proposal that I spent hours before doing could have been, because it's actual work.
Absolutely. And if you could recommend just one book and one record or one album to our listeners, what would they be?
Well, my go-to book, and I read this about once a year, is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I think that's an amazing book. There's a lot of books that say the same ideas, but I think Stephen Covey does it best. And an album, like a music album?
Yeah, I mean, you're based in Brooklyn, great kind of music place as well. And there's a lot of great bands, great music coming out of there just now.
Yeah, that's a great question. Music is, I'm a dancer, so music to me is all about if I can dance to it or not. So I'll just tell you right now, I've been listening to a lot of salsa music, but I don't have any specific. I'm like a Spotify playlist kind of gal.
Yeah.
So I'm not, you'd have to ask my husband. He's the real music buff.
We'll put a link up there to Salsa Spotify playlist. So if anyone listening to just now, and we'll have all these links here as well. And we'll also have a link, obviously, Pia, to your book as well. But I'm going to ask you kind of, as we start to finish up here, kind of one main final question. Let's imagine if you woke up tomorrow morning and had to start from scratch. So you have all the tools of your trade, all the knowledge that you've acquired in building your business and working with the kind of clients you work with, but no one knows you. You know no one. You have to restart. What would you do? How would you restart?
I would go out physically into the world and get my first client. That would be the first thing I would do. So if I knew everything I know now, I know that because I have such a clear message and I know exactly who it's for and how it works and what I'm doing, I only need to talk to a few people to get a client. So that would be the first thing.
Awesome. And finally, what's the best way for people to connect with you, learn more about, obviously learn about the Brandup Process, the BrandShrink, and everything else that you're up to?
Well, you can definitely go to our website, worstofalldesign.com, and that really lays it all out there. And there's a lot of great resources there, a lot of articles as well. But you can also go to badassyourbrand.com, which is the site for my book. And you can grab the first chapter of my book for free. You can download it there. And, I really spent a lot of time writing this book to give people actionable steps on how to do this for themselves. So each chapter is both sharing our story of how we utilized a certain strategy, the lesson itself, questions you can use to find your own answers to this strategy and how to implement it, and then a couple of case studies to show it in action. Because I find that story really brings lessons to life. So if you want to grab the first chapter, and I talk about how we went from debt to 500,000 in 12 months in that, badassyourbrand.com is the place to go.
Awesome. And we'll put all these on the show notes where people jamestaylor.me. Just type in Pia Silva and we'll have all the links there for you as well. Pia, thank you so much for coming on the show. I wish you all the best. And I know you're about to go on a wonderful 2-month adventure as well with your husband and really kind of get out there, enjoy your freedom as entrepreneurs as well.
Thank you so much, James. It was my pleasure.
Hey, James Taylor here again. And if you're interested in living a more creative life, then I'd love to invite you to join me as I share some of the most successful strategies and techniques that high-performing creatives use. I put them all together in a free downloadable ebook that you can get by going to jamestaylor.me. That's jamestaylor.me to get your free downloadable ebook on creativity.